My son said, "You'll be living on the first floor without windows, and my wife and I will be in the luxury suite. I don't want to see you often on vacation." But the hotel was paid for with my money. So I called the bank and, good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. I never imagined my golden years would teach me the hardest lesson about family. For 32 years, I raised my son Michael as a single mother after his father passed away when he was just 5. I worked double shifts at the hospital, sacrificed vacations, delayed my own dreams, all to give him the best education, the best opportunities. When he graduated from business school and married Jennifer, a sharp-tongued marketing executive, I thought I'd finally done my job right. I was ready to step back, to enjoy the retirement I'd earned. The first sign came 6 months after their wedding. Michael called less frequently. When he did, Jennifer was always there, her voice a constant presence in the background. "Mom's calling again?" I'd hear her say, her tone dripping with impatience. Then came the holidays. They stopped visiting my house, insisting I come to theirs instead. "It's easier this way, Mom," Michael would say. Easier for whom? But I pushed those thoughts aside. They were building their life together. Wasn't that natural? I told myself I was being oversensitive, that I needed to give them space. When Michael mentioned they were stressed from work, I offered what I'd always offered: my help, my support. "Mom, you're the best," he'd say, and for a moment, everything felt right again. Then came the vacation idea. It was Jennifer's suggestion, delivered through Michael during one of our increasingly brief phone calls. "Mom, we were thinking, wouldn't it be great if the three of us took a trip together? A week at that resort in Florida you always talked about visiting." My heart soared. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe Jennifer was finally warming up to me. "I'd love that," I said immediately. "When should we book it?" There was a pause. "Well, the thing is, Jennifer and I are pretty tight on cash right now with the new house and everything. We were hoping maybe you could, treat us. Think of it as a family bonding experience." Something twisted in my stomach, but I ignored it. I'd spent my whole life giving to my son. What was one more gift? "Of course, sweetheart. Let me handle it. You two deserve a break." I booked the resort 2 weeks later, sparing no expense. A beautiful oceanfront property, 3 rooms, all-inclusive dining. The total came to nearly $8,000, but I told myself it was worth it. This was my chance to reconnect with my son, to build a real relationship with my daughter-in-law. The first day of the vacation, I should have known something was wrong. We arrived at the resort together, and while I approached the check-in desk with our confirmation, Michael and Jennifer hung back, whispering to each other. The receptionist smiled warmly as she handed me the key cards. "Mrs. Patterson, you're all set. You're in room 101 on the ground floor, and Mr. and Mrs. Patterson are in our luxury ocean view suite on the top floor." My smile froze. "I'm sorry. There must be a mistake. I booked 3 comparable rooms." The receptionist checked her computer, her expression puzzled. "No, ma'am. The reservation shows 1 standard room and 1 luxury suite. The booking was confirmed last week." I turned to Michael, confusion clouding my thoughts. "Honey, did you change the reservation?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. Jennifer stepped forward, her smile sharp as glass. "We just thought it made more sense this way. Michael and I are still newlyweds. We need our privacy, our space. And honestly, you don't need much, do you? You'll mostly just be sleeping there." The words hit me like a slap, but worse was coming. We went to see the rooms. Mine was barely larger than a closet, windowless, tucked in a corner near the service elevator. The air smelled of bleach and humidity. Meanwhile, their suite was a palace, floor-to-ceiling windows, a private balcony, a jacuzzi tub. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, Michael delivered the final blow. His voice was casual, almost bored. "By the way, Mom, Jennifer and I were talking. We'd prefer if you didn't join us for every meal or activity. We're on vacation too, you know. We don't want to have to see you constantly. Maybe you could do your own thing most of the time." The restaurant suddenly felt too bright, too loud. I stared at my son, this man I'd raised, sacrificed everything for, and saw a stranger. "This vacation," I said slowly, "that I paid for?" "Well, yeah, but that was your choice," Jennifer cut in. "We didn't force you." Something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked. And through that crack, clarity poured in like ice water. I barely slept that first night. The windowless room felt like a tomb, the walls pressing in on me as I lay awake on the lumpy mattress, staring at the ceiling. The resort's promotional brochure sat on the nightstand, mocking me with images of happy families laughing on sun-drenched beaches. $8,000. I kept coming back to that number. But it wasn't really about the money, was it? I'd spent far more than that on Michael over the years. The college tuition, $40,000. The car I bought him when he graduated, $22,000. The down payment I gave them for their house just last year, $35,000. And before that, a lifetime of smaller expenses. Piano lessons, summer camps, hockey equipment, SAT prep courses. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The light from the screen hurt my eyes in the darkness. I scrolled through my accounts, mentally calculating. Over the past 5 years alone, I'd given them nearly $80,000. Sometimes they'd asked. Often I'd offered. Always I'd justified it as a mother's love. But when had Michael last asked how I was doing? When had he visited me without wanting something? I tried to remember the last time he'd called just to talk, just to hear my voice. My chest tightened. I couldn't remember. The next morning, I went to breakfast alone. I'd seen Michael and Jennifer heading to the couple's yoga class on the beach, laughing together, her hand possessive on his arm. They hadn't even glanced toward my room. As I sat at a table overlooking the ocean, I was paying to see. Something crystallized in my mind. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to cry or beg or try to guilt them into treating me better. My mother had taught me something important long ago. People treat you the way you allow them to treat you. I'd allowed this. For too long, I'd enabled Michael's selfishness by rewarding it with more money, more sacrifice, more unconditional support. That ended now. I pulled out my phone and called my bank. The customer service representative answered on the third ring, her voice professionally cheerful. "First National Bank, this is Rebecca. How can I help you today?" "Hello, Rebecca. I need to put a hold on a payment." My voice was steady, calmer than I'd expected. "I have a credit card that was used to book a hotel reservation. The charges are still pending, I believe. I need to dispute them." "Of course, Mrs. Patterson. Let me pull up your account. Can you tell me which card and approximately what amount?" I gave her the details. She tapped on her keyboard, the sound crisp through the phone. "Okay, I see the charges here. There's the initial deposit of $2,000 that posted 3 days ago and a pending charge of $6,000 set to post today for the balance of your stay. May I ask the reason for the dispute?" I'd prepared for this question. The services were misrepresented. The accommodations I'm receiving are not what I booked or paid for. I'm requesting a full refund and cancellation. I understand. I'm so sorry you're experiencing this, Mrs. Patterson. Let me start a dispute process for you. The pending charge will be canceled immediately. The posted charge will take 3 to 5 business days to reverse. In the meantime, do you need to make alternative arrangements for your stay? A smile touched my lips. No, thank you. I'll be checking out shortly. After I hung up, I sat for a moment, coffee growing cold in my cup. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from something else. Adrenaline, maybe, or power. For the first time in years, I'd put my own needs first. I went back to my room and packed my single suitcase. It didn't take long. I hadn't really unpacked anyway. Then I walked to the front desk, where the same receptionist from yesterday greeted me with a smile. Checking out early, Mrs. Patterson? Yes. There's been a change of plans. I've canceled the credit card payment for all the rooms. I believe you'll want to speak with the other Mr. and Mrs. Patterson about alternative payment arrangements for their suite. Her smile faltered. Oh my. Let me get the manager. That won't be necessary for me. I'm leaving. But you might want to contact room 1247 before they order another bottle of champagne on what they think is my tab. I walked out of that resort with my head high, pulling my suitcase behind me. My phone started ringing before I reached the parking lot. Michael. I declined the call. He called again. Declined. Then Jennifer. Declined. Let them figure it out themselves for once. I drove to a different hotel 20 minutes down the coast, a modest but clean place with friendly staff and a room that had windows overlooking a small garden. It cost me $85 a night. I paid for 3 nights in cash and finally took a deep breath. My phone had 17 missed calls by the time I settled into my new room. 12 from Michael, 5 from Jennifer. The voicemails started apologetic, confused even. Mom, there must be some mistake with the credit card. Can you call the bank? We're at the front desk and they're saying the payment was canceled. By the 5th message, Michael's tone had shifted. Mom, this isn't funny. Where are you? Call me back right now. Jennifer's voicemails were more direct. This is ridiculous, Patricia. You're acting like a child. Call the bank and fix this immediately. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made another call, this one to my lawyer, Martin Chen. I'd updated my will with him 6 months ago, but now I had different questions. Martin, I need to understand something about gifts I've made to my son over the years. The house down payment, the car, various cash transfers. Can those be considered loans that I could request repayment for? There was a pause. Martin had known me for 15 years. He was careful with his words. Patricia, what's happened? I told him. Not everything, but enough. His silence when I finished was heavy with understanding. Legally speaking, gifts are gifts unless there was a written agreement stating otherwise. But Patricia, I'm more concerned about what you're feeling right now. Is this really about the money? No, I said, honestly. It's about respect. It's about boundaries. I need to make some changes, Martin. The will we discussed, I want to revise it. We can do that. When would you like to come in? I'm in Florida right now. I'll be back in 3 days. Can you draft something in the meantime? I want to establish a trust for any inheritance. Michael will receive nothing directly. The trust will provide him a modest monthly stipend if, and only if, he meets certain conditions. What kind of conditions? Regular contact, genuine relationship, respect. Things that shouldn't have to be contractually obligated, but apparently do. Martin was quiet for a moment. I'll draft something. We can refine it when you return. Patricia, I think you're doing the right thing. After I hung up, I allowed myself to feel everything I'd been holding back. Anger, yes. Hurt, absolutely. but also something unexpected: relief. For years, I'd been trying to buy my son's love, though I'd never have admitted it in those terms. I'd been trying to be indispensable, necessary, valuable, because if I was useful, if I was generous, he'd have to love me, right? But love that has to be purchased isn't love at all. That evening, Michael showed up at my new hotel. I don't know how he found me. Probably called every hotel in a 20-mile radius. I was sitting by the small pool, reading a book, when I heard his voice. "Mom, there you are. Jesus Christ, you scared us half to death." I looked up slowly, marking my page. "Hello, Michael." He stood there, hands on his hips, his face flushed with anger and exertion. "What the hell is going on? You canceled the reservation. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? We had to pay for the suite ourselves. $6,000, Mom. $6,000 we don't have. Then you shouldn't have changed my reservation without asking." "That's what this is about? A room? You're throwing a tantrum over a room?" I closed my book and stood up. My son was 32 years old, 6 feet tall, but at that moment, I felt larger than him. "This is about you treating me like an ATM, like a convenience you can use when needed and dismiss when you can't. This is about you telling me you didn't want to see me on a vacation I was paying for." "I didn't. Jennifer was we just wanted some couple time. On my dime, in a luxury suite, while I stayed in a windowless closet." I kept my voice level. "Michael, I love you. I always will. But I'm done being your personal bank account. I'm done being treated as less than you, as an afterthought, as someone whose feelings don't matter." His face went red. "This is so typical of you. Always making everything about you. We invite you on vacation and you ruin it because what? Your room wasn't nice enough?" "I didn't invite myself, Michael. You asked me to pay for it. There's a difference." "After everything we've done for you," I actually laughed. "Everything you've done for me? Michael, name one thing. One thing you've done for me in the past 5 years that wasn't obligatory or that you didn't benefit from." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "That's what I thought," I said softly. "Go back to your wife, enjoy the rest of your vacation, but pay for it yourselves." I returned home 4 days later to find my house exactly as I'd left it, peaceful and quiet. The garden needed weeding, the mail had piled up, but everything was mine. My space, my sanctuary. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe properly within these walls. Michael had called 6 more times during my drive home. I'd listened to the voicemails while unpacking. The tone had evolved from anger to bargaining. "Mom, let's just talk about this. Maybe we overreacted. Jennifer feels terrible." That last part was almost certainly a lie, but I appreciated the effort, minimal as it was. I didn't call back. Instead, I spent the next morning at Martin's office, reviewing the trust documents he'd prepared. "This is airtight," Martin said, sliding the papers across his mahogany desk. "Upon your death, your estate, valued at approximately $450,000, including the house and your retirement accounts, will be placed in a managed trust. Michael will receive a monthly distribution of $1,000, adjusted for inflation, contingent on the following criteria." He read through the list I'd dictated over the phone. Monthly in-person visits, unless geographically impossible. Weekly phone calls initiated by him. Attendance at major holidays. A written letter once per quarter explaining what he's grateful for in his life. No requests for additional money. Violation of any condition for 3 consecutive months results in suspension of payments. "And if he contests the will?" I asked. "Then he forfeits everything. The trust will instead be donated to the nursing home foundation where you volunteered." Martin looked at me over his reading glasses. Patricia, this is your right. But I have to ask, are you sure? This will damage your relationship further. Our relationship is already damaged, I said. At least this way. If he wants the money, he'll have to put in the effort I should have required all along. I signed the documents. The relief was immediate, like setting down a heavy weight I'd carried for too long. That afternoon, Michael and Jennifer showed up at my house unannounced. I saw their car pull into my driveway through the kitchen window. My first instinct was the old one, to rush to the door, to welcome them in, to offer food and drinks and my full attention. Instead, I waited. Let them knock. When I finally opened the door, Jennifer pushed past me without greeting. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. Michael, at least, had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, can we come in? You're already in. I closed the door and followed them to my living room, where Jennifer had made herself comfortable on my couch. The one I'd bought with my own money, in the house I'd purchased with my own savings, filled with furniture I'd chosen myself. Look, Jennifer started, her voice dripping with false patience. I get that you're upset. The vacation thing didn't go how anyone planned. But canceling our hotel room? That was petty and cruel. We had to put $6,000 on our credit card. Do you know what that does to our budget? I know exactly what it does, I said calmly. You'll have to make sacrifices to pay it off. Cut back on expenses, maybe skip a few luxuries. It's what I did for 30 years while raising Michael. Her eyes flashed. We're not asking you to raise us. We're grown adults. Then act like it. Grown adults don't expect someone else to fund their vacation and then insult that person's accommodations. Michael stepped in, his hands raised in placation. Okay, everyone calm down. Mom, I'm sorry, all right? We should have been more considerate. But you have to understand, Jennifer and I are under a lot of pressure. The new house, the mortgage, the house I gave you $35,000 for? I asked quietly. The silence was deafening. Jennifer recovered first. That was a gift. You offered it. I did. Just like I offered to pay for the vacation. But gifts come with an expectation of gratitude and respect, neither of which I've received. So what? You want us to grovel? Jennifer's voice rose. You want us to pretend like everything you've done was some huge sacrifice? Newsflash, Patricia. That's what parents do. They help their kids. They don't keep score like some kind of accountant. And what do children do, Jennifer? I asked. Do they discard their parents when convenient? Do they take and never give back, not even basic courtesy? Michael's face was red. I've never asked you for anything I didn't need. You asked me for a luxury suite while assigning me a closet. That was Jennifer's idea. Jennifer's head whipped toward him, betrayal written across her features. Are you seriously throwing me under the bus right now? I'm just saying Mom has a point. No! Jennifer stood up, her voice sharp. No, she doesn't. She's being manipulative and controlling, just like she's always been. She uses money to control you, Michael. Can't you see that? The irony was so thick I almost laughed. I use money to control him? I'm not the one who demanded a vacation be paid for and then excluded the payer from enjoying it. They argued with me for another hour. Jennifer swung between anger and attempts at manipulation, suggesting I was lonely, that I was overreacting, that I was jeopardizing my relationship with them over nothing. Michael wavered between supporting her and weakly defending me, never quite committing to either position. Finally, exhausted, they left. Michael paused at the door. Mom, I do love you, you know. I know you think you do, I said softly. But love is more than words, Michael. It's actions. It's respect. It's showing up, not just when you need something. After they left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my garden as the sun set. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. I'd stood my ground. I'd set boundaries. And it had cost me nothing but discomfort. Discomfort they should have been feeling all along. I took the next 5 days for myself. No phone calls answered, no emails checked. Just me, my books, my garden, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd finally valued myself enough to demand better. On the 6th day, a package arrived. Inside was an expensive flower arrangement, orchids and lilies, the kind that cost over $100. The card read, "We miss you. Can we start over? Love, Michael and Jennifer." I put the flowers in a vase, but didn't call them. The gesture felt hollow, transactional. They missed my wallet, more likely. Or they were worried I might actually follow through on some of the things I'd said. That afternoon, Jennifer called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Patricia, did you get the flowers?" Her voice was honey sweet, completely different from her tone during our last confrontation. "I did, they're lovely." "Good. Look, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I know I can come across as intense sometimes. Michael's mentioned that you might have felt excluded on the vacation, and I just want you to know that was never my intention." I listened to her rewrite history, her voice smooth and practiced. This was Jennifer, the marketing executive, delivering a pitch designed to manipulate. "In fact," she continued, "Michael and I were talking, and we'd love to make it up to you. There's this amazing restaurant that just opened downtown. Really exclusive, hard to get reservations. We managed to snag a table for this Saturday. Our treat. What do you say?" "Your treat?" I asked mildly. "Absolutely, our treat. How are you planning to pay for that, given that you just put $6,000 on your credit card?" A pause. "Well, we can manage a nice dinner. We're not destitute, Patricia. But you are broke enough that you needed me to pay for your vacation." That was different. That was, "Look, are you going to hold that over our heads forever? We're trying to apologize here." By inviting me to an expensive restaurant? "Jennifer, if you want to apologize, you can do it for free. In fact, you can do it right now on this phone call." Another pause. When she spoke again, the honey had curdled. "You know what? Forget it. I was trying to be the bigger person here, but you clearly just want to punish us. No. I want you to understand that relationships aren't transactions. That respect can't be bought with a bouquet and an expensive dinner." She hung up on me. I set down my phone and smiled. That evening, my friend Margaret came over for our weekly book club meeting. Margaret had been my best friend for 20 years, a widow like me, sharp-minded and fiercely independent. I'd told her bits and pieces of what had happened, but now I shared the full story. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly fierce. When I finished, she set down her wine glass with a sharp click. "Patricia, I'm going to say something, and I need you to really hear me. You are the strongest woman I know. What you did in Florida, standing up to them, that took courage. But I also need you to understand, this isn't over. People like Jennifer don't give up when they lose control. They escalate." "What do you mean? She married your son for a reason. I've met her exactly 3 times, and every time she's assessed what everyone in the room could do for her. She's a user, and users don't like it when their marks wise up." Margaret leaned forward. "You need to be prepared. They're going to come at you harder. They might try guilt, they might try anger, they might even try getting other family members involved." "What other family members? Michael's my only child." "Exactly, which means they'll look elsewhere. Old friends, church members, anyone who might pressure you to forgive them." As if on cue, my phone rang. It was my cousin Ellen, whom I hadn't spoken to in 6 months. I let it go to voicemail and played it on speaker for Margaret to hear. "Hi, Patricia, it's Ellen. I just got off the phone with Michael, and honey, I'm worried about you." He says you've been acting strange, that there was some misunderstanding on vacation. He's really torn up about it. You know, our parents wouldn't have wanted us to fight like this. Family is everything. Maybe you could call him? I'm sure whatever happened, it's not worth losing your relationship with your son over. Call me back, sweetie. Margaret's eyebrows rose. That was fast. He called Ellen? I felt a flash of anger. He never even calls her on her birthday, and now he's recruiting her to guilt trip me? See? Escalation. Margaret squeezed my hand. But you're not alone in this. You have me. You have the book club. You have people who see you for who you are, not what you can provide. Don't let them isolate you. Over the next few days, I received 3 more calls from relatives and old family friends, all conveying the same message. Michael was worried. I was overreacting. Family should forgive. I responded to each with the same measured reply. I appreciate your concern, but this is between Michael and me. I'm doing what's best for my well-being. Some understood. Others pushed back, insisting I was being unreasonable. I stopped taking calls from those who pushed. Margaret was right. I wasn't alone. My book club rallied around me. My neighbor, an elderly woman I'd helped with grocery shopping for years, brought me soup and told me about her own experiences with an ungrateful daughter. Even my hairdresser, when I mentioned I was dealing with family issues, shared her story of setting boundaries with her adult children. The world was full of parents who'd been taken for granted. We were legion, but we could also be strong. 2 weeks after the phone call from Jennifer, Michael and Jennifer appeared at my door on a Sunday morning. I'd just finished breakfast and was planning to spend the day in my garden when I heard their car pull up. This time, their approach was different. Michael knocked softly, and when I opened the door, both of them wore expressions of contrition. Jennifer was even dressed modestly, no designer labels visible, her makeup understated. "Mom, please, can we talk? Just talk?" Michael's voice was gentle, pleading. "No arguments, no accusations. We just miss you." Against my better judgment, I let them in. Margaret's warnings echoed in my mind, but they were still my son and his wife. I made coffee. We sat in the living room, and for a few minutes, it felt almost normal. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Michael began, "about how I've taken you for granted. And you're right. I have. We both have." He glanced at Jennifer, who nodded with what looked like genuine remorse. "The vacation was a disaster," Jennifer added. "I handled it terribly. I was stressed about work and I took it out on you, and that wasn't fair. I'm sorry, Patricia. Really, truly sorry." They seemed sincere. For a moment, I felt that old, familiar pull, the desire to smooth things over, to accept the apology and move forward. Wasn't that what family did? "I appreciate you saying that," I said carefully. "We want to make things right," Michael continued. "We've been talking about how to show you that we value you, that we're serious about changing." "That's good," I said. "What did you have in mind?" They exchanged a glance. Jennifer spoke. "Well, we thought maybe we could start fresh. Forget about the vacation disaster. Forget about the arguments. Clean slate." "A clean slate sounds nice," I agreed. "Great." Michael's face brightened. "So we were thinking, you know how you mentioned updating your will to Martin?" My entire body went cold. How did they know about that? Jennifer must have seen my expression. "Martin's secretary goes to our gym," she said quickly. "She mentioned you'd been in. We're not trying to pry into your personal business, but Patricia, we're worried. Making big decisions when you're upset." "I wasn't upset when I met with Martin," I interrupted quietly. I was perfectly clear-headed. "But cutting Michael out of your will," Jennifer pressed forward, "that's extreme, don't you think? He's your only child." So that's what this was. The flowers, the apology, the humble act. All of it was manipulation. They'd found out about the will changes and panicked. I didn't cut him out, I said evenly. I established a trust that provides for him while ensuring he maintains a relationship with me. Real relationship, not transactional. Michael's contrition was cracking. Mom, those conditions, monthly visits, weekly calls, quarterly letters, that's treating me like a child. That's controlling. No, Michael. Expecting my son to call me once a week and visit once a month isn't controlling. It's the bare minimum of a relationship. But tying it to money? Jennifer's voice was rising. That's manipulation. That's exactly what we've been saying. You use money to control people. I use money to control people? I stood up. You came here pretending to apologize, pretending to care. But really, you just wanted to pressure me into changing my will back. That's control, Jennifer. That's manipulation. We just think you're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. I walked to the door and opened it. This conversation is over. Mom, wait, Michael started. No. You had your chance to have a genuine conversation, to build a genuine relationship. Instead, you tried to manipulate me. Again. I'm done. Jennifer stood, her face flushed with anger. You're going to regret this. You're going to die alone, bitter and miserable, and it'll be your own fault. Maybe, I said calmly. But I'd rather die alone with dignity than surrounded by people who only love my bank account. You're a selfish, ungrateful. Get out! The force of my own voice surprised me. Get out of my house now! Michael grabbed Jennifer's arm, pulling her toward the door. Mom, please, let's just… Michael, you have a choice to make. You can have a real relationship with me, one based on mutual respect and genuine care. Or you can have whatever this is. But you can't have both. And you can't have my money without the relationship. Not anymore. They left in a storm of angry words and slammed car doors. As their vehicle peeled out of my driveway, I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from power. I'd seen through their act. I'd stood my ground. And I'd won. But Margaret was right. They weren't going to give up easily. The anger on Jennifer's face as she left told me this was far from over. I called Margaret immediately. You were right. They came to manipulate me into changing the will. Are you okay? I'm better than okay, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I'm furious, and that fury is fueling my determination. They're not getting what they want. Not ever again. 3 weeks passed in tense silence. No calls, no visits, no flowers. I used the time productively, meeting with Martin twice more to finalize every detail of the trust. I also did something I'd been putting off for years. I organized my financial documents, creating a clear paper trail of every penny I'd given Michael since he turned 18. The total was staggering. Over $167,000 in gifts, loans that were never repaid, and expenses I'd covered temporarily that became permanent. I compiled it all into a spreadsheet, not because I wanted the money back, but because I needed to see the truth in black and white. Margaret helped me. We spent an entire Saturday going through old bank statements, credit card bills, receipts I'd saved. With each entry, the picture became clearer. I hadn't just been generous, I'd been enabling. Every time Michael made a poor financial decision, I'd cushioned the fall. He'd never learned consequences because I'd never let him experience them. This stops now, I said, looking at the final sum. Damn right it does, Margaret agreed. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by certified mail. The return address was from a law firm I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a cease and desist letter claiming that I was engaging in elder abuse by proxy and financially coercing my son. It alleged that I was mentally unstable and demanded I restore the original will or face legal action for undue influence on myself. I read it 3 times, my disbelief growing with each pass. They were actually threatening to sue me for changing my own will. The legal arguments were flimsy at best, but the intent was clear: intimidation. I called Martin immediately. He asked me to scan and send the letter. "This is laughable," he said after reading it. "Their lawyer should be embarrassed. You can't commit elder abuse against yourself, and changing your will is your absolute right as long as you're of sound mind, which you demonstrably are." What do I do? Nothing. Don't respond. Let me handle it. I'll draft a response that will make them think twice about pursuing this nonsense. He paused. "Patricia, they're desperate. This is a very bad legal strategy, which means they're not thinking clearly. Be careful." I was careful. I installed a security camera at my front door. I documented everything, and I waited. The confrontation came on a Friday evening. Michael and Jennifer arrived with Michael's college roommate, David, who happened to be a therapist. The implication was clear. They'd brought a mental health professional to assess me. I let them in because I had nothing to hide. David looked uncomfortable from the start, clearly regretting his involvement. "Mrs. Patterson, Michael asked me to come because he's concerned about some decisions you've been making," David began awkwardly. "I'm aware of why you're here, David. You're here to evaluate my mental competence so they can contest my will on the grounds of diminished capacity." I spoke calmly, looking directly at my son. "That's why you brought him, isn't it, Michael?" My son had the grace to look ashamed. Jennifer did not. "We're concerned, Patricia. You're acting erratically, making impulsive decisions." "Impulsive?" I pulled out the folder I'd prepared. "Shall we talk about impulsive? Let's review the financial history of our relationship." I laid out the spreadsheet, the documentation, all of it. I walked them through every dollar, every gift, every loan. I showed them the pattern, how requests increased when I complied, how contact decreased unless they needed something. $167,000 over 14 years, I said, an average of $12,000 per year. And in return, I got what? Monthly phone calls that lasted 5 minutes? Obligatory holiday visits where you checked your phones the entire time? David cleared his throat. "Mrs. Patterson, I don't think I should be here for this. This is a family matter." "You're absolutely right, David. This is a family matter. Thank you for your honesty." I looked at Michael. "You brought a therapist to prove I'm mentally unfit. Instead, he's witnessing your manipulation attempt. How does that feel?" Jennifer stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You can't buy love, Patricia, but you sure as hell can lose it by being a controlling, manipulative—" "Finish that sentence," I said coldly. "I dare you." She stopped, breathing hard. "I have never tried to buy love," I continued. "I gave freely because I loved freely. But I'm done giving to people who only take. I'm done being disrespected in my own life. And I'm especially done with you, Jennifer, trying to alienate me from my son while bleeding my bank account dry." "I've never taken a penny from you." "No, you just manipulated Michael into asking for it." I turned to my son. "You have become someone I don't recognize. Someone who would threaten his own mother with legal action for daring to set boundaries. Someone who brings a therapist to his mother's house to prove she's crazy. Tell me, Michael, is this who you wanted to be?" His face crumbled. For a moment, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to cry when he hurt someone's feelings. But then Jennifer grabbed his arm. "We're leaving. Enjoy your lonely life, Patricia." "I'd rather be lonely than disrespected," I said. "Now get out." The lawsuit came 2 weeks later. Despite Martin's warnings and the obvious lack of legal ground, Michael and Jennifer actually filed a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent and to contest the will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. It was the biggest mistake they could have made. Martin assembled a case that was devastating in its thoroughness. We had medical records showing I'd passed a comprehensive cognitive evaluation with flying colors. We had testimony from my doctor, my friends, my hairdresser, my neighbors, all attesting to my sharp mind and sound judgment. But more than that, we had their own evidence against them. Martin subpoenaed their phone records, which showed that 90% of Michael's calls to me in the past 2 years had been followed within a week by requests for money. We subpoenaed their credit card statements, revealing thousands of dollars in luxury purchases made just before claiming they were broke. We even found text messages between Jennifer and her sister, recovered through discovery, where she explicitly discussed strategies to keep the old lady generous. The quote that sealed their fate: "Michael's mom is a gold mine. Just gotta keep her thinking she's losing him. She'll pay anything to feel needed." When Martin showed me that text, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. I'd known it, but seeing the proof in writing was validating in a way I couldn't fully express. The court hearing was brutal. Jennifer tried to paint herself as a concerned daughter-in-law. Michael claimed he was protecting me from myself. Their lawyer, realizing how weak their case was, tried to focus on the controlling nature of the trust conditions. Then Martin put me on the stand. "Mrs. Patterson, can you explain why you established the trust with these specific conditions?" I looked directly at Michael as I answered. "Because my son has spent the last several years treating me as a financial resource rather than a human being. The conditions aren't punishment. They're the minimum requirements for what a parent-child relationship should include: regular contact, mutual respect, genuine connection. If my son can't manage to call once a week and visit once a month, then he doesn't deserve financial support he won't appreciate." "And you believe these conditions are reasonable?" "I believe they're generous. Most parents expect their adult children to maintain relationships without needing a financial incentive." The judge reviewed the evidence, all of it: the texts, the financial history, the pattern of manipulation. When he spoke, his tone was ice. "I find no evidence whatsoever of diminished capacity. Mrs. Patterson is clearly of sound mind and has every right to structure her estate as she sees fit. Furthermore, I find the petitioner's behavior in this matter to be appalling. Attempting to have one's own mother declared incompetent in order to access her assets is precisely the kind of behavior that justifies the trust conditions she's established." He dismissed the case with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be filed again. He also ordered Michael and Jennifer to pay court costs and my legal fees, another $12,000. As we left the courtroom, Jennifer hissed at me, "You've won nothing. You're going to die alone." I stopped and turned to face her. "Jennifer, I've already won. I have my dignity, my self-respect, and my freedom from people who saw me as nothing more than a checkbook. What do you have? A husband who's realizing what he's lost, debt you can't afford, and a reputation in this community as someone who tried to rob an elderly woman." Her face went white, because she knew I was right. The court case had been public record. People talked. Within weeks, the whispers had spread through our community. Michael stood there, looking lost. For a moment, I thought he might apologize, might finally see what he'd done. But Jennifer grabbed his arm and pulled him away. I watched them go and felt nothing. No pain, no regret. Just peace. "Patricia," Martin said gently, "you handled that with remarkable grace." "Grace?" I laughed. "Martin, I obliterated them." "Yes, you did. How does it feel?" "It feels like justice." The final blow came a month later when Michael's company downsized and he lost his job. Without my safety net, without my financial cushion to fall back on, they struggled. Their mortgage payments fell behind. The luxury car got repossessed. Jennifer's credit cards maxed out. I heard about it through the community grapevine. Part of me, the mother part, wanted to help. But I didn't. Because helping now would only restart the cycle. They'd made their choice. Now they would live with the consequences, and I would live with my dignity intact. 6 months after the court case, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. Without the constant drain of Michael's demands, both emotional and financial, I discovered I had resources, time, money, energy, that I'd been pouring into a bottomless well for years. I started traveling, not luxury vacations to impress anyone, but genuine adventures. I spent 2 weeks in Ireland, staying in cozy bed and breakfasts, drinking tea with locals, exploring ancient ruins. I took a Mediterranean cruise with Margaret, where we laughed until our sides hurt and flirted shamelessly with the ship's dance instructor. I'd forgotten what it felt like to do things purely for my own enjoyment, without calculating whether Michael would approve or whether I should save the money in case he needed it. My garden flourished. I joined a local horticultural society and won second place for my roses at the county fair. I volunteered at the library's literacy program, teaching adults to read. I took up watercolor painting and discovered I had a decent eye for landscapes. The book club expanded to include dinners out and theater trips. Margaret and I became inseparable, the kind of friendship I'd never had time for when I was constantly orbiting around Michael's needs. I wasn't lonely, I was liberated. The community had rallied around me after the court case. People I barely knew would stop me at the grocery store to share their own stories of ungrateful children, of boundaries they'd set, of lives they'd reclaimed. I became something of an inspiration to other women my age who'd been tolerating disrespect in the name of family harmony. "You taught me I don't have to accept crumbs," one woman told me at church. "I told my daughter yesterday that I'm not babysitting for free anymore. If she wants a nanny, she can pay for one." I even reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with over the years. Women I'd drifted away from because I was always too busy being available for Michael. We met for lunch, for coffee, for walks in the park. They told me I seemed different, lighter somehow. "You're glowing," one said. And I was. For the first time in decades, I was living for myself. My health improved too. My doctor commented on it during my annual checkup. My blood pressure had dropped, my stress levels were down. Even my chronic headaches had nearly disappeared. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it," she said with a knowing smile. Meanwhile, Michael and Jennifer's situation deteriorated rapidly. Michael's job loss was just the beginning. Jennifer's company had cut her position during restructuring, and her severance package ran out within months. They'd been living beyond their means for so long that they had no savings cushion. They had to sell the house, the one I'd helped them buy. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable area. Jennifer's luxury SUV was replaced with a 10-year-old sedan. The designer clothes disappeared from her Facebook photos, replaced by complaints about unfair landlords and impossible job markets. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Jennifer had started selling her designer handbags online, the same ones she'd flaunted during family gatherings. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd once judged my outdated wardrobe while spending money she didn't have on labels she couldn't afford. Michael reached out once, 3 months after the court case. A simple text. "Mom, I'm sorry. I understand if you can't forgive me, but I'm sorry." I didn't respond immediately. I sat with the message for a full day, examining my feelings. Was I being too harsh? Should I extend an olive branch? But then I remembered. The trust conditions still stood. If Michael wanted a relationship, he knew exactly what he needed to do. Weekly calls, monthly visits, genuine connection. He could start any time he wanted. He didn't start. Instead, I heard through the grapevine that Jennifer had filed for divorce. Apparently, without my money smoothing over their financial problems, the cracks in their marriage became canyons. She'd already moved in with her sister, leaving Michael alone in the apartment with furniture they'd bought on credit. Part of me, a very small part, felt sorry for him. But mostly, I felt that he was finally experiencing the consequences of his choices. No one was cushioning his falls anymore. He had to learn to stand on his own. I, meanwhile, was thriving. At 72 years old, I was having the time of my life. I'd started taking ballroom dancing lessons and had even participated in a local competition, placing third in my age category. The trophy sat on my mantle, next to photos from my travels. I'd also started a blog, sharing my story and offering advice to other parents struggling with adult children who took them for granted. It resonated with hundreds of people. My inbox filled with messages from parents thanking me for giving them permission to set boundaries, to demand respect, to value themselves. One message particularly touched me. "You showed me that loving my child doesn't mean being their doormat." I had a hard conversation with my son last week, and while it was painful, I feel free for the first time in years. Thank you. That freedom, that was the gift I'd given myself. And in sharing my story, I was helping others find it too. My financial advisor was thrilled with my new approach. "Patricia, you're actually growing your wealth now instead of depleting it. At this rate, you'll have a very comfortable cushion for your later years. And a very nice inheritance for the nursing home foundation," I reminded him with a smile. Because that was the final piece of the puzzle. I'd updated my will one last time. If Michael never fulfilled the trust conditions, every penny would go to charity. And I was perfectly at peace with that. I'd rather my legacy help strangers who'd appreciate it than enrich someone who'd never valued it. The transformation was complete. I'd gone from being a woman defined by her son's needs to a woman who defined herself, and it felt magnificent. So what did I learn from all this? That love and respect must go both ways. That being a good parent doesn't mean being an ATM. That you teach people how to treat you, and I'd taught my son all the wrong lessons by never requiring him to give back what I gave. I learned that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary, that being alone is infinitely better than being used. Now, I ask you, what would you have done? Would you have continued to accept disrespect in the name of family? Or would you have demanded better? Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you deserve respect. Never forget that.